Welcome to This Explainer. I'm so glad you're joining us today because we're going to tackle something absolutely crucial. As a founder, you literally pour your blood, sweat, and tears into building your company. But there's this deceptively simple factor, one that most owners completely overlook when they're valuing their business. Today, we're unpacking exactly what that blind spot is and, more importantly, how you can fix it. It really all boils down to one direct question. What happens to the business when you, the owner, leave? For a lot of businesses out there, the owner is the absolute engine. You're the one closing the sales. You're managing the key clients. You're putting out all the fires. But, well, here's the reality check. A buyer isn't just buying your cost revenue. They're buying a machine that they expect to run without you. And if you're the engine, all the buyer sees is massive risk. Okay, let's dive into this. We've got a really solid 6-part playbook today to get you out of the weeds and transform your company into a truly transferable asset. We're going to cover the owner dependence trap, owning versus being the business, and this great exercise called the 30-day question. Then we'll get super practical with documenting your business systems, empowering your management team, and wrap up with the valuation advantage. Starting right off with Section 1, the owner dependence trap. We're going to look at why being the engine is actually a huge liability when it comes time to sell. Moving right along to Section 2, owning versus being the business. This is all about creating a truly transferable enterprise. So escaping this dependence trap, it requires a massive mindset shift. There's a world of difference between building a scalable enterprise and, well, just creating a highly specialized, really demanding job for yourself. Being the business means it's a job entirely dependent on you. Owning a business means you have a transferable enterprise that functions beautifully, whether you're in the office or, sitting on a beach somewhere. Buyers don't want to buy a stressful job. They want an operation they can actually take over and run. Try putting yourself in the shoes of a prospective buyer for a second. Ask yourself this really powerful question. What exactly am I buying if the owner is no longer here? If you're the one responsible for every critical decision and every major customer relationship, the honest answer might be, well, not much. Now, the goal isn't to make yourself totally useless today, but to prove that the business doesn't require you to survive tomorrow. Which brings us to Section 3, the 30-day question. This is a highly practical test to gauge your business's dependence on you. Let's do a little thought experiment together to expose exactly where things might be overly reliant on your daily presence. Imagine you suddenly had to step away for a full month, 30 days, no calls, no emails. Now think about these operational emergencies. Who handles the largest customers? Who approves the purchases? Who runs payroll? Who steps in to resolve an operational problem? If you had to fill in the blanks next to these tasks with a specific person's name, could you do it? If your answer to several of those is nobody, you might be having a slight panic attack right now. But hey, take a deep breath. We're not doing this to criticize how you've run things. In fact, your heavy involvement is exactly what built the successful company in the first place, right? But to get to the next level, the new goal has to be transferring all that incredible knowledge out of your head and directly into the organization itself. And that leads us perfectly into Section 4, documenting your business systems. It's time to start building actual systems, not just relying on habits. This is where the rubber meets the road. You've got to begin writing down the operating manuals for your critical functional areas. Think about sales. How exactly are leads generated, quoted, and converted? What about inventory management, accounting, payroll, or even basic technology workflows? All of these absolutely require clear, documented procedures. The main objective here is simple. Make your business completely understandable and repeatable for a new buyer. You have to escape what I like to call the trap of trapped knowledge. I mean, you probably know exactly which vendor gives the best pricing or which software does that one critical function. That represents years of hard-earned experience. But if it's just trapped in your head, it's completely useless to a buyer. You must put that knowledge on paper before it walks out the door with you. And a huge part of that documentation involves cross-training. It's really just a straightforward 3-step process. First, identify the critical responsibilities. Second, establish a primary person to handle them. And third, train a backup person. I mean, what happens if your top salesperson resigns or your operations manager is out sick? This cross-training creates necessary redundancy, it slashes your operational risk, and it proves to buyers that your company has real built-in resilience. Up next is Section 5, empowering your management team and shifting that crucial decision-making authority. Because look, documenting systems is fantastic, but you also need people who are empowered to actually execute them. We have to shift decision-making authority away from you. Instead of the old structure where an employee goes to a manager who then comes to you for the final say, we need to shift to an empowered structure where the employee just goes to the manager. Period. Removing yourself from those routine decisions proves to a buyer that you have a fully functioning management structure already humming along. Now, we hear a lot about customer concentration, having too much revenue tied up in one single client. But relationship concentration, that is honestly just as dangerous. If your top customers only ever deal with you, a buyer will naturally and rightfully worry that those key accounts are going to pack up and leave the minute you eventually step down. So we need to completely shift the customer's mindset. You want them saying, I do business with this company, rather than I do business with the owner. To achieve this, you have to gradually start introducing your key employees into important customer meetings. Let your team handle the routine communications so they become familiar, trusted faces to your absolute best clients. Which brings us to our final stop, Section 6, the valuation advantage and making your business less risky. So why are we going through all this trouble? Because when a buyer comes in and sees heavy owner dependence, their alarm bells start ringing. For sure, they're going to worry about revenue sustainability, customer retention, operational continuity, and the incredibly high costs of training your replacement. And how do buyers compensate for those specific risks? Well, they give you lower offers. They demand heavy seller financing, structure painful earnouts, or force you into a grueling multi-year transition period where you're essentially stuck working for them. No thanks. The equation here is super simple. Heavy owner dependence equals a lower valuation and a lot more contingencies. Independent operations, on the other hand, equals a business that is way less risky, highly transferable, and commands much stronger deal terms. By actively removing yourself from the daily grind, you are directly increasing your company's market value. It's a real game changer. But a quick reality check. You cannot do this overnight. You need to make yourself less necessary years before you actually plan to sell. Ideally, this process needs to start 1 to 3 years before you go to market. You need time to build a track record that proves to a buyer that the revenue and operations remain consistently strong even as your personal involvement fades into the background. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. Stop just operating your company and build a business someone can buy. Your endgame shouldn't just be generating a good income for yourself today. Your goal is to create a truly transferable asset for tomorrow. Start documenting those systems, empower your team, and take a step back. By the time you're actually ready to sell, buyers are going to be lining up. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.